Hi, I'm Angela from As Above Astrology, and today I'm going to talk about something that might be a little bit new, might be a little controversial, but this is a video about why I don't work with the full moon when she is, when she's exactly at the full moon stage of her cycle. So I'm going to read a couple of passages from some of the Western Renaissance astrologers. This first one is from William Ramsay on the planets ruling the signs. It's chapter 10, page 68 of the houses of the planets and wherefore they were so distributed. So, Saturn, because he is naturally cold and an enemy to heat, and the highest and most remote from the luminaries of all the planets, hath therefore assigned him Capricorn and Aquarius, which are the opposite signs to Cancer and Leo. Wherefore they are cold and moist, and by reason of their opposition, Saturn is reputed hurtful and the most obnoxious and malevolent of all the planets. By reason he thus opposeth the luminaries that are the lamps of light, life, and nutrition. So, if we look back into kind of what does Saturn stand for? Who is he? He's the slowest of all the planets. He's very melancholic. He's also the god of death. He rules death. He rules spirituality and everything that's beyond the boundary. Um, so when we're looking at this and we see him placed in, opposition to Cancer and Leo, if you think about it this way, when the sun is in Cancer, when the sun is in Leo, this is the height of summer. Cancer is when summer is really starting to take off. Everything is growing in full force. Leo is when those hot temperatures stabilize, when it's, the best time of the year for things to grow. And then, when the sun gets to Virgo, things start to die off a little bit. But when you think about where Saturn's houses are in the zodiac, it's exactly opposite to Cancer and Leo. So that's Aquarius and Capricorn. And that's what Ramsay is saying in this passage is if you think about it in terms of where the sun is during the year, when the sun is in Capricorn, when the sun is in Aquarius, that's the coldest part of the year. It's when the earth is the furthest away from the sun. And it's when, in a northern climate where I'm at, um, everything kind of dies and it snows and everything looks like it's dead. So that makes a lot of sense. They're also saying, Saturn is very, in not my words, William Ramsay's words, obnoxious and malevolent. So Saturn is known as the greater malefic. He's kind of that planet that just doesn't take any BS, right? So, if you are doing something that's not sustainable, if your way of doing things is not sustainable, he kind of comes along and he's like, "Hey, what the heck are you doing? Like that's not gonna work." So he kind of catches up behind you and shows you the consequences. He shows you the ripples that you're making in the pond, and it's very sobering. It can be, a Saturn return happens around the 29th or 30th year of life for every individual. And that can be a very jarring time of life. There's usually one area of your life that kind of falls apart. And you have to figure out how to reassemble that in accordance with the laws of nature. And that's kind of Saturn's function. It's his role is making sure that things are, we're operating in a sustainable way. So when we think about that and we compare that to the sun or Jupiter, who are the benefic planets, right? The sun is what gives us life. The sun is like, hey, I'm in Leo, everything can grow and it's so beautiful outside and it's so warm and there's rain and there's humidity and it's just a perfect environment for growth and for everything to turn green and be alive. And that's just the generosity of the sun in Leo. The sun is what gives us life. Um, so when we think about the relationship of those two planets, they're in some ways very, very opposite. And when we're saying that Saturn is in opposition to the sun, it's he is doing a different function. He's kind of going behind what the growth is, right? And he's going well, that doesn't make sense. We're going to get rid of that. This is not useful. We're going to get rid of that. And then, oh, well, that's really dysfunctional. We're going to fix that. So he's kind of an a-hole, right? No offense, sorry, Saturn. Um, no offense to him, but like that's just his function. He's kind of a grumpy old man who doesn't put up with BS. And so he's got this reputation as the greater malefic. And so when we look at his position in the heavens, Aquarius and Capricorn, he is in exact opposition to Cancer and Leo, which are the signs ruled by the two lights, the moon and the sun, respectively. So when you're in opposition to that which gives life, the sun, that's that's kind of like you're taking an opposite stance. Saturn doesn't want to give life to everything. Saturn wants to stop things that are not useful. Saturn wants to stop things that are dysfunctional. Saturn wants to stop things that are broken. And in a way, like that's a mercy, right? He sets a limitation and a boundary on the amount of things that can go wrong in this realm. And that's a blessing, even though it's a painful part of our reality. Um, but that's where he gets this malefic reputation from, because he's kind of the like wise old guy that's got the rod in his hand, and he's going to discipline wisdom into into his children, into his followers. Um, so that's kind of the context behind a lot of what William Ramsey is saying in his like assessment of which sign Saturn rules and that opposition aspect. And that's the part I want to focus on, is the opposition aspect, because when we think about what does the word opposition mean? Yes, it's opposites, but if there's two parties and they disagree, they're in opposition to each other. Typically, that plays out in a very adversarial way in the real world. And so you can think of it like it's having an open enemy in front of you who is standing against what you're doing. And William Lilly, I have Lilly right here. I'm reading from page 27 of Christian Astrology. William Lilly kind of echoes this, right? He says, um, if you find Saturn in the first degree of Aries and any planet in the first degree of Libra, they being now 180 degrees from each other, they are said to be in opposition, a bad aspect. And you must be mindful to know what signs are opposite to each other, for without it, you cannot erect the figure. So he's saying, like, you cannot write a chart, you can't create a chart without knowing which signs are opposite to each other. So he's echoing that oppositions are a bad aspect. And it kind of comes back to this like adversarial relationship that you have when there's an opposition. It's kind of me versus you, right? So when we think about the full moon happens when the moon is in direct opposition to the sun. The sun is the king of the planets. He rules the other six planets in the Chaldean order. I can talk kind of a little bit more about that in another video, but the sun is the ruler of the planets. He's the center of the solar system. And when a planet is in opposition to the sun, you're basically taking a stand against the king. You're taking a stand against the most powerful of the planets. Now, it's debatable, right? The moon is also incredibly powerful. She's the swiftest planet. She's the closest to the Earth. Um, and I think in our day and age, like we're most familiar with working with the moon. We want to work to increase things when the moon is waxing. We want to work to decrease things when the moon is waning. But when she's at a full moon, she's actually like in opposition with the king. And so if the sun is the king, I think of the moon as being the queen. It's not necessarily from like a traditional source, but I think of her as the queen, right? And so when we have a full moon, it's like the king and the queen are in opposition to each other. They can't agree about something. So I work with the moon when she is on her way towards being a full moon, and I kind of have a cutoff of she needs to be, let's see, so the moon's orb is 12 degrees, and half of the orb, it's called a moiety, so that's 6 degrees. And then the sun's orb is 17 degrees. So I call half of his orb 9.5 degrees. So I want to see them at least 15.5 degrees apart. And if she's 15.5 degrees, but she's applying, then she's still headed into that opposition. So I like to give some leeway so that there's not formally an opposition in the heavens. It's incredibly powerful when the moon is in that position. And it's also incredibly powerful as she's coming away from that opposition, when she's separating from the opposition. That's when she's really at the height of her full power because she's filled with the king's light, right? She's the biggest she's going to be in the sky, but whatever opposition, whatever disagreement they were having is now resolved and she's moving away from that, right? That's what that signifies in the heavens. So you want to wait until that opposition has resolved or work with her before that opposition forms. At least that's the way that I do it. So there isn't a right or wrong way to do any of these things, but this is just my way of doing it, and I would say like that's my reasoning and my logic behind it, and I just wanted to share it, give you some food for thought, and if you have any questions, let me know. I'm always happy to kind of talk about like what I've seen in the traditional texts or what my thoughts are on different things. I hope that was interesting, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until next time.